Democrats, they don't want to come back. They don't want to come back. I think they should be back here, but they don't. They're enjoying their vacation. And they shouldn't. This is a time. Yeah, I think they are. I think they are. If you look at Nancy Pelosi eating ice cream on late night television, yeah, I think they probably are. They're having a good time. I think they should be back. I think they should all come back, and we should work on this together.
President calling out Congress for being MIA during this whole situation. Nancy Pelosi certainly has no sense of urgency to help the American people. We're now seeing that the early warnings about how there'll be a lack of incentive for workers who have been furloughed or lost their jobs. They've been fired. If they're furloughed, I don't think they qualify for this. But there's a lack of incentive for them to go back to work because they prefer to get the state benefits plus $600 of federal sweetener that was added into it for the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, look, I'm not about to sit here and say that workers who need this money, they're a bunch of fat cats now or anything like that. That's crazy. But they did structure this in such a way that Congress did make this Paycheck Protection Program function so that it is just people acting in their interest, saying, I'd rather stay and have no exposure to the virus, stay home, not go back to work, and make more money. People are getting paid right now. I mean, workers who are used to making about $15 an hour, when they look at the full scale of their salary now, or rather their full take-home pay, they're making $1,000 a week to not work. Producer Mark, I know a lot of people who, if they could do literally nothing and just do whatever they want, and we're going to get $1,000 a week, and then they knew that there would be jobs probably waiting for them when that money ran out because everyone's going to be looking for jobs, I think a lot of people would stay home. I don't think that would be hard to find.
Yeah, why wouldn't they? Get paid to do nothing?
As more money than I was making my first few years at the CIA. I wasn't making $1,000 a week. So not even close, really. Well, I mean, I guess, whoa, sorry, I just smacked the microphone. I guess I was having a little bit of a flashback to being a federal bureaucrat, and it was getting me a little upset. But yeah, no, the bill is functioning the way that it's supposed to. And guess what? It's functioning in such a way that people don't want to go back and do their jobs, which is making the slowdown in the economy even worse. Remember, there's all these different components that are not getting any focus right now. The businesses that are going to go bankrupt, the industries that are going to have a really hard time coming back, even when they're technically allowed to when the lockdowns end. Restaurants operating at 25% capacity means you're going to have a whole lot fewer restaurants opening, especially in places like New York, which means, tens of thousands of jobs are dependent on that. I mean, the service industry, I think, is about 1 in 10 jobs in general in this country. And it might even be, I think retail might be 1 in 10. Service industry is also something like 1 in 10. Producer Mark, take a look and tell me what the service industry breakdown is and what the retail industry is. Because also retail, I think a lot of folks are going to say, okay, well, do I really want to go to a store if I can just have things delivered to my house at this point? Which had already been happening for a long time. But are you going to go to a store if you have to wear a mask? Don't have to wear a mask sitting around with Amazon on your lap or with your laptop open to Amazon. Don't have to wear a mask for that, at least not yet, not till the crazy libs get a hold of it. Oh, man, and that brings me to there's so much more here. That brings me to the latest, which is that Mike Pence was at the Mayo Clinic and was not wearing a mask, and now we have Pence maskgate. Mike Pence is terrible. What has he done? Was he nuzzling anybody? Was he coughing in anybody's face? The mask thing is a precaution, and it's not, you would think that they could understand that the vice president, when he's making a public appearance, here you go, retail, wow. Producer Mark on the spot here. Retail and service workers make up about 32% of the workforce. So I was saying about 10% and about 10%. I was right, but a little low on the low end. It's more like 30%. Retail and service. That's where the jobs are, folks. That's where a lot of the jobs across the country come from. And those businesses, are they ever really coming back? What are we going to do? The Democrats are also going to say, with any bailout for airlines, with any bailout, I mean, the cruise ship industry is getting a bailout. like, I'm not a cruise ship guy, so I can't say I'm, but I understand that a lot of people work very hard in it, and, you know, they need to feed their families and everything else. But I don't know if that's a business model that's going to work. I've thought, you know, I had read enough of these stories about, you know, norovirus outbreaks and these other things. And I don't know if Coxsackie virus was one, but they'd have these outbreaks of like a stomach illness, effectively we call it a stomach flu, even though I don't think it's a flu. And they'd have these on these ships, and it would just turn into a giant floating petri dish. And that was before COVID-19. So I'm not a cruise guy. Producer Mark has actually done a cruise. You liked it, right? You said it was good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't know. You know, I have one scheduled for December. I don't know if I'm going on it right now.
See, you're a perfect example of what I mean. Even if they say, oh, no, Mark, it's fine. You're allowed to go on your cruise. You're going to get your money back? You're going to go on that cruise as of right now.
This second, I'm getting my money back.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah. And I can't argue with that. I mean, I would do the same thing if I were in that. I had actually put down a deposit to go to a beach in December for my birthday. And, you know, I'm hoping that I might still be able to go, but who knows? I mean, the world is crazy right now, and we're all just being fed such an overwhelming diet of fear. But, oh, no, don't worry. The Democrats have got all this covered. And that's why they're yelling about Pence and about how Trump is a conspiracy theorist. Pence isn't wearing a mask. Here's fake Republican Nicole Wallace. These people, I just want to note, and I just let me say this before I get into this. I have always told you, and I'm honest with you about whatever my rules are for this show. I don't trash friends of mine. And so people that I am friends with and have known for years, even when they have gone to the dark side, even when they have betrayed the team, so to speak, or at least Republican team, I don't mean Team Buck, that's different. You know, if someone crosses swords with me publicly, then it's fair game. But if someone decides that they're going to be, you know, an ideological turncoat, I will not trash them if they are my friend on the show, just so you know that, because some of you always reach out to me, what about so-and-so? And I'm like, you know, look back into my past. You can generally tell who in the media business I'm pretty cozy with. But see, I'm honest with you about that. The same way that I tell you that I'm not doing neutral reports here, that I have an opinion, I also do not trash. I will not ever lie about any of my friends or promote people that I think don't deserve it or anything like that, but I will not attack them unless they attack me. And which unfortunately does occasionally happen too. But some of these and Nicole Wallace is not, I've never met her, don't know her. And, you know, she seems like a horrible, smug, nasty person who's not really good at anything. And there's a lot of that in the Bush administration. You look back, the Bush administration had a lot of really unimpressive folks. And, you know, there's the early stage Trump administration. Anyone want to argue with me about the bad choices made there? Because Michael Cohen called and he wants to charge you. Oh, no, he can't charge you $800 an hour anymore because I think he lost his law license. There's some very bad choices made there, too. Just because someone works for an administration doesn't mean they have anything worthwhile to offer or worthwhile to say. And I think it's important that all of us remember that. But here is Nicole Wallace over at MSNBC just doing what she expects she's supposed to do, which is just feed the MSNBC audience of poorly informed, ideologically brainwashed libs a steady diet of Trump-Pence hatred. And so she serves that up with glee. Play 9.
The second most powerful man in the world, revealing himself in this video as a coronavirus truther, or at least a mask truther. He's also much closer than 6 feet. I mean, to touch an elbow, you have to touch something. So he's closer than 6 feet. And I forget that he's the vice president. This is the kind of human being that repels me in the grocery store or the Walmart. I mean, I don't want to be that close to anybody while we're still at this phase of the pandemic. So the president and vice president have really revealed themselves as this wacky combination of conspiracy theorists, quack medical proponents, and truthers. He either doesn't believe that the mask is keeping people safe, or he doesn't think that rule applies to him. And the danger here isn't that people like you or me will see that and not wear our masks.
There's so much wrong and so much stupid there that I don't even really have time to go over it. I would just say a few things. One is the vice president has been tested already numerous times for COVID-19. He is negative. So it's not, a lot of us could be walking around. I could be an asymptomatic carrier right now, and I would have no way of knowing. percentage-wise, and this is all about risk, it's all about percentages, it's all about likelihood, the percentage chance that somebody who in the last couple of weeks has been tested and is negative for COVID-19 now happens to have COVID-19 and is really and is asymptomatic is very, very low. You know, that the vice president would have picked this up after being negative until whatever it was, a week or two ago when he had his last test, strikes me as highly implausible. And no one's wearing masks all the time in all circumstances. There's no such thing as perfect security. There's no such thing as perfect protection from the virus. So what the heck is Nicole, the idiot Wallace, talking about here? That they're truthers? What does that mean? They don't believe the virus is real? MSNBC, you could make a really fun montage, and it's really, in retrospect, tragic, but you can make a montage of them saying, the virus is fine, it's no big deal, you know, and then when we all found out it was going to be much worse than anticipated, now it's all Trump's fault, which is the single most important thing that the media can focus on now. Not stories about therapeutics that maybe are going to save a lot of lives, not getting everyone ready for the psychological burden of having to accept the risk of being out there and going back to work, being involved in day-to-day life in a way that is not continuous, endless shutdown. Instead of the press rising to this occasion, they've gotten worse than they've ever been. And then you have the Democrats who, no surprise, that they are still disgraceful. I mean, completely disgraceful on this topic, and that's not going to change anytime soon.
The Washington Post, who have reported that the PDB, the president's daily brief, was sounding the alarms over the spread of COVID in China and the lethal danger that it posed to Americans as early as January. Were you aware of that at the time?
No, but I'll tell you this, as an intelligence person, I've over 25 years experience in the intelligence community. The president's daily briefing is just so very important to decision making and the rest. So what you just heard begs the question, what did the president know and when did he know it? In addition to which, what did the scientists tell him and when did he tell them? Because actually, as a matter of fact, this president has presided over the worst disaster in our country's history, an assault on the lives and the livelihoods of the American people. And he did so by neglect of information, also denial and delay in accepting the facts.
That's going to be the pitch for why the American people should vote for unimpressive buffoon Biden and credibly accused of sexual assault buffoon Biden in the fall. That Trump has presided over the worst disaster in the history of this country, and it's all his fault. And it's his fault because he didn't listen to the experts, even though we have video of the experts, including Dr. Fauci, St. Fauci himself, who was telling us that this was not anything to be concerned about in January and into February. So why would the president have known differently? How would it be possible? Unless Fauci was out lying to the American people, which would be a whole separate problem. But this is just the rewriting of history that will occur. They will lie about this. They will scheme. They will omit. And they will have the media doing their bidding all along. And that's the Democrat plan to defeat Trump in the reelection. And they are rooting for failure here with the reopening of the economy. They are. They would like to see real economic pain. There were liberals, you will recall, who were admitting that they wanted a recession before all this happened because it would mean that Trump wouldn't win. In fact, I think that she would back me up on saying this. In the first weeks that I was doing that show, Rising at thehill.com, I told my then co-host Crystal Ball several times, I said, look, you don't have to agree with me, and I'm just saying she would back up that I said this to her many times. I said the only way Trump doesn't win re-election is if we have a major recession that hits, a cyclical recession that has nothing to do with Trump, which is really what this is in a sense. It's not an economic recession or a cyclical economic recession. It's a recession that has been caused by the cycle of pandemics, really. It's just a much longer cycle than other things that we see with 10-year. About every 10 years, you have some kind of a correction in the market. Well, it looks like about every 100 years, we get hit with a really bad pandemic. Although we had been hit with some bad ones in the last 10 years that we should have, the last 20 years, we should have paid closer attention to. I think that's clear at this point. But the Democrats don't have any answers about how to make any of this stuff really better. I thought this was interesting. Here's AOC, the most famous and most ignorant Democrat congressperson, I think, right now. Certainly, if you add those two together, points for ignorance and points for famousness, she's both shockingly ignorant and very, very prominent in left-wing media. Here's what she says. Play 19.
Mass unemployment in the United States was a choice. We had policy options in front of us, and we could have guaranteed payrolls in the United States of America to prevent any person from losing their job due to coronavirus. And what did elected officials do? What did Mitch McConnell do? What did Donald Trump do? They chose not to do that. So these are not things that happen by accident. Unemployment is not happening by accident.
I just would want to know what her response would have been then. It seems that, and I think we'll get to if somebody does drill down on this with AOC, if she's even thought this through, is that the government just should have started paying people directly instead of trying to pay people through their employer. But that would have been even more complicated, wouldn't it? We saw them run out of money. We saw that there were log jams that happened. But also, we don't want the government to be paying people with money that is being debased in real time, being devalued in real time because there is no productivity behind it. We're now all just running this massive experiment on, does money have value? What is the value of money if there is nothing other than the full faith and credit of the United States government to back that up? Well, the full faith and credit of the United States government is worth what it is because of what all of us do day to day. It's not just value because the government says it's value. There is something behind that promise. There is the creation of products and the provision of goods and services. There's intellectual property. There are holdings of real estate and factories, and there is an economy behind the currency. And right now we're testing out how far can we stretch the currency without having an underlying economy to back up what we're doing with the currency. If you told somebody before this all happened that this was the government's plan for all of it, I think they would be terrified because we are playing with fire, dancing around a whole bunch of gasoline canisters. That's what we're doing with the economy right now. It is a terrible, terrible risk we are taking. By the time, look, people didn't see the financial meltdown in 2008, which they told us could have destroyed the global economy, and all the experts and all, the Fed chair, and they didn't see that. You're going to tell me that they've got this whole thing worked out right now, and they have to listen to people like Pelosi and AOC? And Pelosi is just the worst. The worst. Blaming Trump, pretending, intelligence for 25 years. Pelosi's an imbecile. Oh, I know, she's powerful and she's rich. There are a lot of dumb, powerful, rich people. A lot of them work in media, actually. In fact, I think some of the dumbest are also some of the richest and most powerful. It's true of Congress, too. Well, look at this. We've got Justin Amash, congressman who's now going to be running as a third-party candidate, or has been toying with this idea, and now looks like what he's launched the exploratory committee, right? The step right before one runs for president as a Libertarian Party candidate. And the Washington Post headline here tells you a lot about what they're thinking. Justin Amash could have a big impact on the 2020 presidential race, but how? Well, Justin Amash is on the issue of civil liberties and surveillance and the deep state has shown himself to be a fraud. He was all in on the Russia collusion hoax stuff. He couldn't see through that at all and had no problem with what was going on, had no problem with the FBI acting as a weapon, as an instrument of Democratic Party political control. In fact, he was a cheerleader for it. He was fine with it. Completely utterly wrong on Russia collusion, as we see now also from not just the additional information that's come out from the Inspector General report, but also what we now know from additional disclosure in the case against General Michael Flynn, where he was set up, which I've been telling you for years. It was very obvious. You don't send in the FBI to talk to the National Security Advisor about the Logan Act unless you're desperate to concoct some scheme to come up with a criminal charge against him. which is exactly what they did. And it was the Obama administration on the way out, lashing out at Trump and his people for beating Hillary and taking power out of the hands of the Democrats. And people that ideologically and psychologically and emotionally identify with the Democratic Party, irrespective of whether they say they're nonpartisan, but who work at the FBI and the DOJ, never mind the appointees who are clearly partisans that Obama put in place. They took it upon themselves to abuse their power, to abuse the law, and to try and undo the election results of the 2016 presidential. That's what they did. And where was Amash, the civil libertarian and all that? Who knows? He was horrible on this issue. And I think that the number of people who care about this guy running is tiny. And this is where you start to hear from libertarians who, I like some libertarians on a personal level, but after a while, we care so much about liberty. The whole libertarian thing with the third-party candidates can get a little bit tiresome. It can. What are they really hoping to accomplish by doing this? That one day they're going to win the election with somebody like this? Justin Amash. Look, this is a ploy for attention. It's like that guy who used to be a big Trump supporter and a conservative, and then he became a never Trumper and just like desperate for attention. He's like one of these guys who ends up on, Big Brother 17 or something, one of those reality shows where they have some guy who played some other guy in a sitcom in the 90s, and then all of a sudden he's, wrestling people in Jello on TV, just, anything to get back in the public eye. But yeah, I don't know. Justin Amash is running. Woo, that's going to really be exciting for some people. I saw some editorials today about how this is really going to matter. I think people are just desperate for political news of any kind because there's been so little of actual campaign politics to speak of because the Democrat candidate is locked away in a bunker. Here I am. I'm running for the chief dog catcher of Wichita, and my name is Joe Biden, and I don't know why I talk like this, but I get confused about where I am, and my leg hairs are blonde and corn pop, and I took out the rusty razor blade, and I said, hold on a second, man, I got these blonde leg hairs I got to shave first. I mean, it's just so weird. The whole thing is so weird. But we don't have a lot of focus on politics. So anytime there's a political story, I think people that make a living doing that, they seize on it and they say, oh, wow, look at this. Now we have an opportunity finally to talk about something that is not about COVID-19. But that's where we are. Justin Amash, exploratory, who cares? I never liked this guy. I don't know. Always struck me as just kind of surly and self-important. Not a fan. Never interviewed him. Never wanted to. Let's see. We have, this is good. First off, wait. Before I get to that, we have Jared Kushner, who we don't hear from very often, but who's very much involved in the most inner workings of the White House and wields considerable authority within this White House. Here's what he said about the eternal lockdown crowd, which I think we should perhaps start referring to them that way because they are setting this up as eternal lockdown would be a better option than those of us who want to open up the country. Play clip 6.
And again, the goal here is to get people back to work. The eternal lockdown crowd can make jokes on late night television, but the reality is that the data's on our side, and President Trump has created a pathway to safely open up our country and make sure that we can get our economy going and get America back to a place where it will be even stronger than it was before.
He's right about the data being on our side. We should note that. The data is on the side of those who want to reopen. Oh, the study I mentioned to you before, I was going to get into the Tara Reade allegations against Biden and the hypocrisy there, and we will in just a moment. But I did think it would be worth pointing this out to you because we often hear about the other costs out there, and here's what we assume, because we can understand, we can reason through this, that by preventing people from getting basic medical care in hospitals, by saying that surgeries are non-essential and therefore will be delayed, all kinds of screening and testing and chemo and all these things have been put on hold. I mean, I'm really worried. I'm going to tell you something. I'm concerned that I'm just going to wake up and one of my teeth is going to be rotting out of my head and I'm going to have to deal with, okay, how do I get emergency dental work done? Because I haven't been able to get a cleaning in months and I was due right when this whole thing happened. And you got to think, okay, I mean, I know that's not a big deal, but imagine that same basic idea for people that have really serious health problems, which there are a lot of folks out there who do. Right? I'm just thinking about what happens if a tooth rots out of my head. Look, getting a root canal, that whole thing can be very painful. What happens with that? Well, imagine if I had a heart condition, or if I had diabetes, or if I had if I needed to do dialysis and these things that, some, procedures, they're continuing, I suppose, because otherwise people would die, but they've cut back so much on them. Our buddy Alex Berenson, who's out there always raising the alarms about what the data really says versus what the lockdown consensus is telling you, he points this out. He sent this to me today, and I hat tip him for that. Oregonians have died at a rate well above the average since mid-March, but the tie to COVID-19 is unclear according to state data. Here's what it says. More Oregonians have died in the past month than is typical in mid-March and early April, but fewer than half the excess deaths were officially connected to coronavirus. 245 Oregonians in all died during the 5 weeks between March 16th and April 19th than those who died the same 5 weeks in 2017, 2018, and 2019 on average. So you got about a 250 person death rate increase compared to the average for the 3 years before. During those 5 weeks, 78 Oregonians, did I say Oregonians? It's Oregon, so it's Oregon. No, it must be Oregonians.
I think it's Oregonians.
Right, Oregon, not Oregonians. Come on. But anyway, during those 5 weeks, 78 Oregonians died from COVID-19, according to the state health authorities' official count. So why did we have? That's less than half of the excess deaths. What caused the spike in other deaths? Now we don't know this yet, but we might know relatively soon. What if the excess deaths, meaning a whole lot of people in Oregon, this would be over 100 excess deaths, which now you start to look at that across the country, because the situation in Oregon would be no different from other places state by state around the country. If you had 100 people per state in all 50 states die of that 5 week period, that's 5,000 people. It's a lot of people. And remember, Oregon is not by population a very large state. Start looking at California, start looking at Texas, start looking at places where they have tens of millions of residents. The theory here, and this is where I think this is why Alex just flagged this story for me, Alex Berenson, but the theory behind it clearly is, well, are these people that are dying from heart attacks or dying from other medical issues that come up who just don't want to go to the hospital? They're frightened of going to the hospital, so they don't go, and then they don't get emergency medical care or early interventions necessary to save their lives. i.e., the lockdown is directly causing loss of life. That has to be factored into what this whole process has been about, and the wisdom or lack thereof of taking this approach. Starting to get this data. We should continue to look at it. All right, we do need to talk about this absence of principle that we're seeing, and it's the left should be made to really just sit and stew in their lies. They should have to marinate in their lack of principle over Me Too allegations against Kavanaugh and against Trump, but more specifically or more clearly, the ones against Kavanaugh were really outrageous and wrong, and became the focus of the country for about a month-long period. So we'll talk about where is the Me Too stuff when it comes to Biden. Oh, that's right. It disappears.
Do you believe the allegation that's been put out there by Tara Reade against Biden?
So when we say believe women, it's for this explicit intention of making sure there's space for all women to come forward, to speak their truth, to be heard. And in this allegation, that is what Tara Reade has done. She has come forward, she has spoken, and they've done an investigation in several outlets. Those investigations, Vice President Biden has called for himself. Vice President Biden has vehemently denied these allegations, and I support Vice President Biden.
Do you think some of the Democrats who supported Blasey Ford's allegations against Kavanaugh, who've been silent on this Biden allegation, do you see that as a contradiction, that they're not speaking out more and addressing Tara Reade's allegation?
No, and I stand by Vice President Biden. He's devoted his life to supporting women, and he has vehemently denied this allegation.
What else do you need to hear, folks? I mean, how much more clear could it be? There you have Senator from New York, Kirsten Gillibrand, who has completely abandoned what she used to say on this issue, who has decided that women do not have a right to be believed, but rather they have a right to be heard. That's an enormous change from what it was during the Kavanaugh hearing. Huge change. And isn't that so convenient that it happens to coincide with a necessary campaign of silence and or complacency in order to continue to allow the campaign, the ridiculous campaign of Joe Biden, to be pushed forward by these power-mad Democrats? Everything that she said there was just dishonest. It's a lie. It's disgusting. She's a fraud. She's a person of no ethics, no character, not willing to show any decency in the face of adversity, does whatever she has to do to get wherever she wants to go. I've also been told credibly, and I cannot repeat the story, but I was told credibly by somebody who is a Democrat, just what a horrible person Gillibrand is and what a fraud she is, from a very personal anecdote from someone that I trust a lot. So I'm basically this more than just the what's out there in the public. I've just heard she's a very bad person. You know, she does the whole like, oh, I'm just a mom, and I'm just a mom who happens to be a senator, and I'm just helping everybody, and it's all a front. She's not a nice person. Just remember that. And she's not a principled person. That's clear. I mean, that's beyond any real doubt. Why does she believe Joe Biden? What she should have to give under what? Oh, and calling for the New York Times and other liberal newspapers to do an investigation. What about the FBI investigation they called for of Kavanaugh? They wanted an FBI investigation of somebody who's going to be elevated to the Supreme Court. They don't want an FBI investigation of somebody who's going to become president and be elevated to being commander in chief, have the nuclear codes, have tremendous power. No FBI investigation of those allegations. Oh, you know what would happen? If they call for a background investigation, they were all so clever, weren't they? It's not a criminal investigation, it's a background investigation. Well, how can you prove yourself, how can you prove the negative here if you're Kavanaugh? Problem with calling for a background investigation of Biden on this would be the FBI could go around. They already have names of people to talk to. They already have some contemporaneous corroboration. It's going to look bad for Biden. And remember, he's also a guy who sniffs women's heads, grabs them, gropes them, and it's just weird, doesn't understand boundaries. I've said this before. It has been written in a book about Biden, and I was told it personally by someone in the Secret Service that it was true, that Biden used to love to, strip completely. Old, gross, wrinkly Biden would strip down out of his clothing naked and go swimming in front of female Secret Service detailees. Does that anybody think if that were your wife or your daughter, would you be okay with that? Who's assigned to protect this buffoon, a total buffoon. And really, if he hadn't just been in the game forever, gotten very lucky, the guy's a loser. I know he was vice president. I don't care. Dan Quayle was vice president. All the liberals ever did was make fun of him and say how terrible he was, right? Vice president. Look, Cheney was like the Dark Lord. He was the Sith. He's evil. Joe Biden's a deeply unimpressive guy. And he also has this history of behaving poorly in front of and around women. And Gillibrand, I stand with Joe Biden. You can just hear just the power that she wants. She's just, whatever she has to say here. This was the woman who threw her Senate colleague Al Franken under the bus because he had the video taken of him groping the woman, or not the video, the photo of him groping over her body armor. But, it wasn't funny and it was creepy. But, she said and then someone else said that he tried to kiss her or something. And she was the one, you'll remember, who said he's got to go. And he had to step down from the Senate. He's got to go, but Bill Clinton could be president for 8 years, but Al Franken had to go. And I think Al Franken's disgraceful. But it's amazing how the principle here shifts depending on the needs that any particular Democrat has in the moment. The allegation against Joe Biden from Tara Reade is entirely credible, and the libs don't know what to do about it. Because they know what they're going to do, in that they're going to make this go away and they're going to soft pedal it, and they're going to just make sure that Joe Biden is a viable candidate for the presidency. Whatever that means, whatever they have to pretend is true that isn't true, they'll do it. Where are all the women's organizations? Think about that. Where's the National Organization of Women? And where's Gloria Steinem? Where are all the feminists now? Oh, you mean that they're really just power-mad leftists who pretend to care about women but really just care about their own political agenda and use women as a tool, as a weapon against conservatives and traditionalists and Republicans? That's what they do. That's why feminism in the modern context now exists. Otherwise, explain to me where the women's organizations are right now. Backing up Tara Reade, supporting Tara Reade. Oh, you mean they're all silent? They're all gone? No one's surprised by this.